A breakup is supposed to be an ending. Two people stop being together, and life moves forward from there. But for a number of women and girls across this country, the moment they tried to end a relationship was not the end of anything. It was the moment the danger actually started. Domestic violence researchers have said it for years. The most dangerous point in an abusive relationship is not the middle of it. It is the exit. What follows are 5 real, documented cases, drawn from court records, police statements, and prosecutor releases, not rumor and not speculation. This is part 3 in the series. Here are 5 of the most disturbing deaths caused by breakups. It is May 13th, 2019, in Darien, Wisconsin, a small village in Walworth County near the Illinois line, roughly 2 months after Jenna Brovald ended her relationship with Casey DePriest. The house where it happened sits at 452 Buckingham Court, a quiet address on a quiet street, and it used to belong to both of them. They had dated for more than a year and lived together in that home. After the breakup, Jenna stayed there. DePriest did not. That distance was supposed to mean something. It did not. Casey DePriest was 29 years old, the same age as Jenna. In the hours before the shooting, according to police reports later summarized by the Gazette, Jenna woke to roughly 18 calls and texts from him. She went to her job at a hospital in Oconomowoc, where about a dozen more calls and messages came through. By that afternoon, she wanted to go home, pack a bag, and spend the night somewhere else. By every account she gathered that day, she did not feel safe. She was right not to. When she got back to Buckingham Court, DePriest was waiting. Police were called just after 6 p.m. by someone reporting a possible shooting. Jenna was not the only person hurt. Her brother, Evan Brovald, 26, of nearby Delavan, was shot in the shoulder and managed to escape the house. Officers found him wounded and rushed him to a hospital where he survived. Not knowing what they were walking into, police called in the FBI and SWAT teams from as far away as Milwaukee, and negotiators spent hours trying to make contact with the house. When they finally went inside, they found Jenna Brovald and Casey DePriest both dead. He had shot her, and then he had turned the gun on himself. That single fact changes everything about how this case moved forward, because it means it never really moved forward at all. There was no arrest. There was no arraignment. There was no trial where a jury sat and weighed evidence. No verdict read out loud to a courtroom full of Jenna's family. Delavan Police Chief Jim Hansen confirmed the sequence to reporters and described the shooting plainly as a domestic violence incident. That confirmation is close to the last official word the public ever got. Police also noted there was no record that Jenna herself had ever reported prior abuse, though another woman had obtained a restraining order against DePriest years earlier, in 2013. When the person who pulls the trigger does not survive it, the legal system does not get a case. It gets a report, and then it closes the file. Researchers who study this kind of violence have a name for the pattern: post-separation femicide. Strip away the clinical sound of that phrase and what is left is simple. A man kills a woman at a place they used to share in the weeks or months right after she leaves him. Darien fits it with almost no room for interpretation. The former shared home, the short window after the breakup, the barrage of unanswered calls, the man who could not accept that the relationship was over and made sure it ended on his terms instead of hers. What makes this case sit heavy is not complexity. It is how plain it is. Jenna Brovald did what she was supposed to do. She ended things. She stayed in her own home. She noticed the danger on the last day and tried to leave. She did not vanish or go into hiding because by every measure available to her, the relationship was simply over. And over was supposed to mean safe. It did not. 2 months of distance turned out to be 2 months of a countdown nobody could see running. The house on Buckingham Court was not a hiding place or a fortress. It was just where she lived. And it was also, in the end, exactly where he knew to find her. It is February 16th, 2024, around 9:22 at night, at a hotel on Haggerty Road in Canton Township, Michigan. Officers get a call about a shooting. That is all the dispatch says at first, a shooting at a hotel, the kind of call that could mean almost anything. Nothing about the setting says tragedy. It is a comfort suites off a stretch of road near a freeway exit, lined with the usual businesses you would find anywhere: gas stations, chain restaurants, a place where people check in for a night and check out the next morning without anyone remembering their face. Ordinary, that is the word for it. Right up until it was not. When officers get inside, they find 19-year-old Veronica Crane behind the front desk with a gunshot wound to the head. She was working the overnight shift, doing her job, and she is pronounced dead at the scene. 19 years old. Whatever plans she had for the rest of that week, the rest of that year, they end behind a hotel counter in Canton, in front of a workplace that will never look the same to the people who were in it. The man who shot her did not get far. He fled the hotel and crashed his vehicle a short distance away, near Interstate 275 and Ford Road, where officers found him injured in the roadway. The Wayne County Prosecutor's Office identified him as Joseph Slocum, then 23 years old, and, according to prosecutors, Veronica's ex-boyfriend. The relationship had ended. Her family later told reporters she had tried more than once to get away from him. Prosecutors alleged that the breakup itself was the reason he came looking for her that night, that he tracked her to the one place he knew she would be, and killed her where she worked. This case did reach a resolution, and it is worth stating clearly. Slocum was initially charged with first-degree murder. In March 2025, he pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and a felony firearm count, avoiding a trial. The following month, in April 2025, a Wayne County judge sentenced him to a term of 40 to 60 years in prison. There was a plea, there was a sentence, and there is now a number attached to what he did. What there is not is any account from him that makes sense of it, because a guilty plea ends the story before anyone has to explain it. Veronica was not home when this happened. She was at work, behind a desk, in a public building with cameras and co-workers and strangers walking through the lobby every few minutes. If anywhere qualifies as a safe distance from an ex-partner who will not let go, a staffed hotel front desk on a busy road looks like it. Lights on, people around. A job to do that has nothing to do with him. None of that stopped it. A public place, in the middle of an overnight shift, was not a wall. It was just a location, and the danger did not need privacy or darkness to reach her. It needed proximity and time, and eventually it had both. Veronica had tried, by every account her family has given since, to put real space between herself and Slocum. She had left. She had gone somewhere with witnesses and structure, and a role that had nothing to do with their relationship anymore. And still, on a Friday night in February, that distance closed in the time it takes to walk through a lobby door. He served the space between them as if it were nothing, and by the time anyone understood what was happening, it was already over. It is November 25th, 2022, in DeKalb County, Georgia, in the Decatur area just east of Atlanta. 19-year-old Janotica Whitehead is shot and killed. And unlike the two cases before it, this one did not happen in a single, unplanned moment. It happened at the end of a long build-up that investigators would later trace back for months. Darren Hicks was her former boyfriend, someone she had been with since high school. The kind of relationship that starts young and just keeps going, because neither person imagines an ending to it. Janotica eventually did imagine one. She enrolled in college, started building a life that pointed away from Hicks, and tried to put distance between them. According to the DeKalb County District Attorney's Office, that is exactly when he changed. In the months before her death, Hicks hit her repeatedly. He strangled her. He threatened her with a firearm. Each of those events on its own might have looked to an outsider like an isolated incident, a bad night, a fight that went too far. Strung together, they read as something else entirely, an escalation, one that Janotica may not have fully recognized for what it was. 2 weeks before she died, it got worse. Hicks showed up at the Waffle House where she worked and lured her out to the parking lot. There, prosecutors said, he strangled her again, and when she ran, he chased her with a gun. She survived that night. She went back to work, back to her life, back to whatever routines make a person feel like a bad night is finally behind them. It was not. On November 25th, cell phone records showed Hicks following her car as she drove to work. He called her again and again. The kind of relentless contact that is not really communication, it is pressure, until she finally pulled over. At close range, he shot her twice in the head. DeKalb County Police found her body the next day in her car, parked in a wooded area off Snapfinger Parkway. Hicks was arrested weeks later, in December, without incident, which is its own quiet detail. A man capable of that violence, taken into custody calmly, as if none of it had happened. At trial in the fall of 2024, a jury convicted him on every count prosecutors brought: malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, and possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. Judge Desiree Sutton Piegler sentenced him to life in prison, plus an additional 5 years. No parole consideration changes that math in any meaningful way for a very long time. What the district attorney's office pointed to afterward was not the shooting itself. It was everything that came before it. The hitting, the strangling, the Waffle House parking lot. All of it real, much of it known in some form to people around Janotica, and none of it enough, on its own, to stop what came next. This was not a man who snapped. It was a man who escalated, in stages, over months, each stage worse than the one before, right up until the last one. The office also raised a harder question in the aftermath, one that outlived the verdict. Why a young woman's months of documented terror had drawn so little public attention while it was happening. Janotica had done the thing everyone tells young people in dangerous relationships to do. She left. She built a future somewhere else, a college, a new chapter that did not include him. And Hicks treated that future as something he had the right to take back by force, one warning sign at a time, until the warnings ran out. The distance she put between them was real. It just was not the kind of distance that stops a bullet, and the system that might have closed the gap did not close it in time. It is October 12, 2012, at an apartment in Highland Heights, Kentucky, just across the river from Cincinnati. Ryan Poston lived there. He was 29, a young attorney who had built a career in the area after law school, the kind of steady professional life that takes years to put together. Shayna Hubers was 21, a college student who had been dating Poston, on and off, for roughly a year and a half. That night, inside his own apartment, Poston told her he was ending things. Not a fight that spiraled out of nowhere, not a slow unraveling. He said the relationship was over, in his own home, and within a short span of that conversation, Hubers shot him. Not once, 6 times. There was never any dispute at trial about who fired the gun. The only question that would eventually occupy 2 separate juries, years apart, was why. Hubers would maintain that she acted in self-defense. Prosecutors argued something far colder. What happened next is the detail that made this case impossible to look away from. Before she called anyone for help, before she called the police, Hubers took a photograph of herself with Poston's body still in the apartment where he had just been shot. When that image surfaced later in court, it did not just unsettle the room. It became, in a lot of ways, the center of gravity for the entire prosecution, a single photograph doing more to suggest her state of mind than any witness testimony could. Then she called 911 herself. On that call, Hubers told the dispatcher that Poston had been trying to break up with her, said it plainly, as though it were context the dispatcher needed in order to understand the scene officers were about to walk into. It was not a confession exactly. It was closer to an explanation offered before anyone had even asked for one. The case went to trial in 2015. Prosecutors argued the motive was simple. Poston wanted out, and Hubers could not accept it. On April 23, 2015, the jury convicted her of murder, and she was sentenced to 40 years. But that conviction did not hold. In 2016, it came out that one of the jurors who had sat through the trial and voted to convict had a prior felony conviction of his own, which under Kentucky law disqualified him from serving on a jury in the first place. The reversal had nothing to do with the facts of the shooting, nothing to do with the photograph or the 911 call or any piece of evidence presented. It was a procedural failure buried in jury selection, and it meant the entire case had to be tried again from the beginning. So in 2018, Hubers went back to trial. The evidence was largely the same. The 6 shots, the photograph, the phone call in which she named the breakup before anyone had accused her of anything. A new jury heard it all and reached the same core conclusion the first one had. guilty. This time, though, the sentence was heavier. Rather than a fixed term of years, she was sentenced to life in prison, with parole eligibility only after serving 20. In 2020, the Kentucky Supreme Court upheld that conviction and sentence, and the case finally came to rest. What lingers about this case is not just the photograph, though that is the detail people remember first. It is the sheer endurance of it. 2 full trials years apart, a reversal, an appeal to the state's highest court, all of it circling a killing that happened inside a matter of minutes. A breakup conversation, 6 shots, a photograph, a phone call. Everything after that was the legal system slowly working its way, twice over, to the same conclusion about a young man who was, by every account, simply trying to end a relationship and was killed for saying so out loud in his own living room. It is July 3rd, 2011, in Wayland, Massachusetts, a town of quiet streets and good schools outside Boston. Lauren Astley, 18, has just graduated from Wayland High School. Weeks earlier, she had broken up with Nathaniel Fujita, also 18, her boyfriend of about 3 years. They had dated through high school, the kind of relationship built inside hallways and sports seasons and shared friend groups. And when it ended that spring, Lauren did not cut him off completely. She tried to stay on friendly terms with him instead. It is worth pausing on why, because it was not naive and it was not reckless. It is what a lot of teenagers do after a breakup, especially ones who have been together long enough to have overlapping friends and years of shared history. Staying cordial feels like the kind, mature option, a way to end things without cruelty. Lauren made that choice because it seemed like the decent thing to do, not because she had ignored some obvious warning, but that decency did not buy her safety. On the evening of July 3rd, Fujita lured her to his house at a time he knew his parents would be away and had her park her car out of sight. Inside, he strangled and stabbed her. Then he left her body in a marsh off a road called Water Row, where a passing cyclist discovered it the next day. A relationship that had ended months earlier, a young woman trying to keep things kind, and a former boyfriend who turned that opening into an ambush. At trial in early 2013, in Middlesex Superior Court, something unusual happened in the opening statements. Fujita's own defense attorney, William Sullivan, conceded right away that his client had killed Lauren Astley. There was no denial, no alternate suspect, no attempt to contest the basic fact of what happened. Instead, the entire defense shifted onto different ground. Not who did it, but the state of mind Fujita was in when he did it. Sullivan argued that his client had suffered a brief psychotic episode and was not criminally responsible. Prosecutor Lisa McGovern countered that this was not a young man who lost control, but one who was angry that Lauren had ended things and who planned the killing carefully, choosing the time, the place, and the way she would arrive. The jury did not take long to decide between those two stories. After roughly 7 hours of deliberation across 2 days, they returned a verdict of first-degree murder, along with assault convictions. In Massachusetts, first-degree murder carries a single mandatory outcome, and Fujita received it: life in prison without the possibility of parole. He has challenged the verdict in the years since, including an argument built around a later schizophrenia diagnosis, and the state's highest court has repeatedly declined to disturb the conviction. The case did not stay contained to a courtroom in Massachusetts. National outlets picked it up and used it to talk about a gap most parents and schools do not know how to fill. Nobody sits teenagers down and tells them that the period right after a breakup, especially with a partner who has not accepted it, carries its own specific danger. Health class covers plenty of things. This usually is not one of them. In the years since, Lauren's parents, Malcolm Astley and Mary Dunn, have turned that gap into their life's work. Through the Lauren Dunn Astley Memorial Fund, they have pushed conversations about healthy relationships and dating violence into schools and communities, with programs that start with young students and build toward the harder subjects by high school. Her father in particular has become a steady public voice on the issue, speaking to students and families about the warning signs that went unspoken in his own daughter's life. It is not a resolution, it is a response. One family trying to make sure the warning exists somewhere for the next teenager who thinks staying friendly is the safe choice. 5 cases. 5 different states, different ages, different weapons, different courtrooms, and underneath all of it, the same starting point every time. The danger did not begin during the relationship. It began the moment someone tried to end it. Jenna moved out and stayed in her own home. Veronica took a job with witnesses all around her. Janotica enrolled in college. Ryan simply said the words out loud in his own apartment. Lauren tried to stay kind. Every one of them did something that gets recommended as the safe move, the responsible move, the way to lower the risk. None of it was enough by itself, because the moment of leaving is not the finish line people assume it is. It is the moment the risk spikes hardest. Separation is not the safe part of the story. Too often, it is the most dangerous one.